Alright, welcome back. Let's have some more fun with media queries. So we had already decided that 600 would be our next breakpoint, right? So what should we change at this width? Well, first of all, I want to make both the description here and the reviews go from side to side, okay? So I want them to occupy 100% of the available width, because we really don't have any more space here right now. And if we decrease this even more, then the effect, of course, becomes more dramatic. And so I want to fix that. So going back to our CSS, let's start by creating a new variable here. And I'm going to call it small, and we want 600 pixels. So 600 divided by 16 is 37.5 rem. Or M, actually. Okay, and so let's now use that. And I'm going to just copy this media query here. And where we want this media query to be is on the detail, right? So let me show that to you again. So right here. So we basically want the description and the user reviews to be one below the other. So all we have to do on this flex container here, the detail, is to change the flex direction, right? So let's do that. So flex direction from row to column. And here, of course, it has to be small. So remember, when we have two media queries, we first put the one for the larger screen and then after that the one for the smaller screen. And that's because both of these will apply, right? Because the screen at 600 pixels is also smaller than 900 pixels, which is this media query here. And so both apply. But in this case, if there's some conflicting declarations, we want the last one to apply. In this case, there's nothing conflicting, so one has padding, one has flex direction, and so there's nothing conflicting here. But if we had a padding in this media query here as well, then we would want this padding to apply and not the one for the larger screen. Okay, so let's check that. So moving below 600, and here we go. Now, of course, there are some small fixes we have to perform, but the main goal is already accomplished. So one below the other right here. Now we have to remove this margin here from the right and actually add some margin here at the bottom, so to create some space here. Okay, and that is in the description. So getting that from here, again, making this the second media query, we want the margin right to be 0. And so right now we have these conflicting declarations that I was talking about earlier. And so of course we want this one to apply and not the 3. Okay, and then some margin at the bottom of 3 rem as well. And that should be good. All right. So that looks a lot better and also future-proof. Okay, so for all these smaller width coming down here, this is still okay at all times. Okay, so we'll never have to touch this again. Now the next thing that I'm concerned about is this navigation here, right? So for example, at this width here, so at this 535, for example, there's already no more space to fit this entire text here, so car rental. So what we should do here in this media query, which covers this part, which is the one we're working on right now, is to actually put this symbol here on top of the text. Okay, and so we already know how to do that, of course. That's not hard at all, because these two elements are inside of the link, which is already a Flexbox container. Let me show that to you. So this side nav link is already a Flexbox container. Yeah, here. So display flex. And so all we have to do now is to change the flex direction once again. So you see that when we're building a smaller version of the interface, a lot of time we change the flex direction from row to column. So that is probably the biggest advantage of using Flexbox for responsive design. Okay, so let's now do that. So where is that? Yeah, here we go. So right here in the link, right? Such as I showed you in the inspector before. So flex direction, column. Okay. Now taking a look at this, well, it occupies way too much space now. So we should remove some padding. So let's put it at like 1 rem only. Okay. That's maybe a bit too less. Actually, we could maybe leave it as it was. Okay. But now another thing here is this icon. Okay. So it's not really centered, even though we have align item set to center here. So the problem actually is this margin that we have on the right side. So this right margin. So let's remove that and also slightly decrease here the size of the icon. Okay. So let's put this one back to 1.5. And what I actually wanted to decrease was the sides, okay? Because otherwise there will not be enough space to actually fit the content when we further decrease the viewport width, okay? And so now let's do these other changes that I was talking about. So the margin right, of course, needs to disappear. So we want no margin at all. And then let's slightly decrease the size, like to 1.5 rem, for example, width and height as well. Let's check it out. And so yeah, that looks a lot better, right? Just give it a couple of space between the icon and the text, and then it's already perfect after that. So just some small margin at the bottom. So let's just say margin right is 0, and then margin bottom is like 7 pixels. All right, and so yeah, that's perfect now. Now next up, what is still way too huge is some parts here in this hotel overview, right? So this text here is a bit too much. There's overall a bit too much space, and also this is here too big. And so it doesn't really look so natural here compared to the size of the rest of the elements on the page. But those should be a couple of very easy fixes. So let's quickly do that and write some more media queries. So legal and here overview. So first of all, I want to change the font size of this heading here to 1.8 rem, and then also the padding is a bit too much, because this padding here is actually what defines the height of this entire overview element. And so if we decrease the padding on top and bottom, like to 125 rem, then it all decreases a bit. Okay, and in the sides we can put 2 rem, and so that should be better. Well, let's take a look at what else we can change here. So I was talking about the rating, right? So let's change the padding here as well. So remember that rating is that pink container, okay, which contains both the average and the count, and it has a lot of padding. So let's change that to 0 and 1.5 rem. Then down here we can change the font size of this one to like 1.8 rem, and then also decrease this font size here further down to 0.8 or 0.5 actually. So just really small. Let's check that out. And okay, so I think that looks a lot more natural right now, especially compared with this lower part that we have here. Okay, so let's take a look at this, decrease maybe the width a little bit, and I think that it looks pretty good still. Well, maybe except here in the top, so here in the header, that starts looking a bit too cramped, right? Now we could of course leave it like this, but there's something else that I want to show you. Okay, I want to show you some more Flexbox, because as you've seen probably, I really like it. And so I keep wanting to show you more and more and more of it. Okay, so let's just create a new breakpoint here at, let's say 500 pixels, and then we can move the search bar down here. Okay, so like below these two. So we have the logo, then we have this user nav, and then after that, let's put the search bar. And this way we can use something that I showed you in the intro lectures, but that we haven't used in the project yet. And that is the order property, right? Remember that one? So let's create a new breakpoint here at 500 pixels, which is where this starts to look a bit weird up here. Okay. So 500 pixels, which equals 31.25 m. Okay, so that's 500 pixels. And I'm going to call this one the smallest. So we have the largest and the smallest. So let's copy a media query from here. So you see, I really like to always copy this. Makes it a bit easier and faster to write out. So smallest. and then actually on the search bar as well. This is not what we want. What I wanted to show you was the search bar. And yeah, and that's in the components, of course. So let's move over there. And here it is. So as I was saying, we want to move the search bar to the third position, so to the last position. Now, do you remember what I told you in the intro lectures about the default value for the order? Well, it's usually 0. And that means that right now the logo and the search and the user nav all have a order of 0. So if I set the search to order of 1, then it will be the last one, right? And so it will move all the way to the end. Then of course this has to be the smallest, but now that should work. And yeah, actually it is working. So now it's the last element and we can confirm that. So on a larger screen that's not happening, and as soon as we hit 500, it moves. So great. But remember what we wanted to do here was to actually move this one down a bit, okay? So basically move it to a new row. And how can we do that with Flexbox? Well, it's actually very simple. It is just flex wrap and then set it to wrap. So now we are allowing the flex items to wrap into a new line if they don't have enough space in the flex container. Okay, so let's check it. And actually it's not really happening anything right now, because for now it looks like there's still enough space. So we have to wait a bit until it moves down. Okay, and so starting at this width, that's exactly what happens. Okay, but we want this to start right at 500 pixels. Okay, and so what do we have to do? Well, we just have to make the search bar a bit wider. So let's do that. Back to our component. And all we have to say is that we want it to have a flex basis of 100%. So basically the width of the element should be 100%. It shouldn't shrink and it shouldn't grow. And so right now it should probably already be working. And yeah, indeed, it's now occupying this entire width here, at least all the way here until the side, which then expands as soon as we focus the input field. All right, now we just have some spacing issues here to solve, because the header is no longer tall enough to fit all this content. So let's come back here and simply increase the height of the element to, let's say, 11 rem. Or we can even do a bit more so we can see the effect even more. So let's see what is going to happen now. And alright, so that gives a lot more space. Now, do you still remember from the Flexbox intro lectures how we could control the space between the rows of the container? There was a property just for that, and it's called align content. So let's experiment with that. And first set it to center. So let's take a look what happens. And okay, so they're now really together here, these two rows. So this row, first one here with these first two flex items, and this one, they are basically vertically centered now. Okay, but what we want here is really just space around. Okay, so you can experiment with this a bit to see the different possibilities, but I think that this one is the best. Well, actually, let's experiment with that right now. So we could have space between, of course. And what do you think this will do? You already see it. So it pushes both to the edges, right? So that's space between, but that's not really ideal here in this case, right? Then we also have flex end as always. So pushing both rows down to the end of the container, and flex start, of course. But both are not really what we want. What we want is space between. We want space around, not space between. Okay, and actually this is probably a bit too high. So let's make it an 11 rem. And yeah, that's a bit better. Now just to fix this a bit weird looking input element here with these rounded corners, which is also not really centered, let's just fix that. Okay, and we're going to do that by simply setting a background color here on the entire search. Okay, right now we have this background color on the input only, but we can also put it on the entire search element. And so that should fix it. Okay, so I think that looks a bit more natural. All right, so let's just take a look at a couple of different devices here. So that's the design on the iPad in portrait mode. Then in landscape mode, it looks like this. looks pretty good if you ask me. Then we have the iPad Pro, for example, and that's not really ideal with all the space down here, but I think we can live with that. Then this is in the landscape version, and that's a huge screen, and so it looks almost like a normal computer. Then just this iPhone here. And here things are not really perfect, as you can see, but I think we've written enough media queries. And so if you want to fix that for yourself, then please go ahead and do that. It would be a great exercise. But I think I already showed you more than enough how media queries work. And so that would be a great job to do for yourself and to just train a bit more with the media queries. So we also have the Galaxy here. Okay, and so for phones, it's not really 100% perfect, as you can see. But again, please feel free to fix these smaller issues by yourself, because for now, this is actually all that I had to show you. So Flexbox is once again perfect for responsive design, and especially the flex direction property is set to column. So that's like a real lifesaver. Saves us a lot of work, a lot of time. All right, so we're practically done here with the project. Let's just jump into the next and final video where I just want to make some final considerations and wrap up this project.